Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing good. The topic we are going to study today is history of printing. The history of printing is a very lengthy topic, so I have divided it into centuries. First, we will study about 13th century and history of printing in it. Type characters cast from metal, bronze are developed in China, Japan, and Korea. The oldest known book was printed by using metal type dates back to the year 1377. It is a Korean Buddhist document called Selected Teachings of Buddhist Sages and Zen Masters. Now, let us study about 15th century and history of printing in it. Even though woodcut had already been in use for centuries in China and Japan, the oldest known European specimen dates from the beginning of 15th century. Woodcut is a relief printing technique in which text and images are carved into the surface of block of wood. In this, the printing parts remain level with surface while non-printing parts are removed typically with a knife or chisel. The wood book is then inked and substrate pressed against the wood block. The ink that was used is made of lamp black, that is a soot from oil lamps mixed with varnish or boiled linseed oil. Books are still rare since they need to be laboriously handwritten by scribes. The University of Cambridge has one of the largest libraries in Europe, consisting of just 122 books at that time. In 1436, Gutenberg begins his work on printing press. It takes him 4 years to finish his wooden press work, which used movable metal type. He published Bibles as his first publication in his press. The first edition of Bible had 40 lines per page. After that, 42 lines version came into 2 volumes. In 1465, the first dry point engravings are created by the house bookmaster, who was an artist belonging to South German region. Dry point is a technique in which an image is incised into copper plate with hard pointed needle of sharp metal or a diamond point. John and Wilden of Speyer are probably the first printers to use pure Roman type, which no longer looks like the handwritten characters that other printers have been trying to imitate until then. In the year 1476, William Caxton buys equipment for the Netherlands and establishes the first printing press in England and Westminster. In the same year, copper engravings are for the first time used for illustrations, and with those engravings a drawing was made on copper plate by cutting grooves into it. By the end of the century, printing has become established in more than 250 cities of Europe. The main challenges of this industry was distribution, which led to the establishment of numerous book fairs. Among them, Frankfurt Book Fair was the most important one. Now, let us study about the 16th century and history of printing in it. Aldus Manutius was the first printer to come up with smaller portable books. He was also the first to use italic type, designed by Venetian punch cutter Francesco Greffo. In 1507, Lucas Cranach invented woodcut, a technique in which drawings were reproduced by using two or more blocks printed in different colors. In 1525, the famous painter, woodcarver, and copper engraver Albert Tuer published Unterweisung der Messung, that means a course of an art of measurement, a book on the geometry of letters. Pietro Bembo was a Venetian scholar and cardinal who became famous for his work on the Italian language and poetry by publishing his very famous book Historia Veneta in the year 1551. The Bembo typeface was named after his name. Christophe Plantin was one of the most famous printers of this century. In his print shop in Antwerp, he produced fine work ornamented with engravings after Rubens and other artists. Many of his works, as well as some of the equipment from the shop, can be admired in Plantin Moretus Museum still now. Now, let us study about 17th century and history of printing in 17th century. Plantin is also famous in this century as he was the first to print facsimile. A facsimile is a reproduction of an old book, manuscript, map, art, print or other item that is as true to the original source as possible. In Paris, the Imperial Royal Juilliard is established in 1640 at instigation of Richelieu. In the year 1642, Ludwig von Sagen invented mezzotint, that is, a technique to reproduce half-tones by roughening a copper plate with thousands of little dots made by a metal tool with small teeth called a rocker. In this, the tiny pits in plates hold the ink when face of the plate is wiped clean. The first American paper mill was also established in the year 1690. Now, let us study about the 18th century and history of printing in it. In 1710, the German painter and engraver Jacob Christoph Leblon produced the first engraving in several colors. He used mezzotint method to engrave 3 metal plates. Each plate was supposed to be inked with different colors using red, yellow, and blue. Later on, he added a fourth plate bearing black lines. This technique laid down the foundation of modern color printing. Leblon's work was based on Newton's theory published in 1702, which stated that all colors in spectrum are composed of 3 primary colors that were blue, yellow, and red. William Caslon was an English typographer whose foundry was began operated in London for over 200 years. He also created a typeface, that is, Caslon Roman Old Face, was cut between 1716 and 1728. The letters were modeled on Dutch types, but they were more delicate and not as monotonous. Caslon's typeface remained popular and its digital versions are still available in today's world. In the year 1731, the Gentleman's Magazine was published for the first time. It was generally considered to be the first general interest magazine. This publication ran up uninterruptedly until the year 1922. In 1732, Benjamin Franklin established his own printing office and became publisher of Pennsylvania Gazette. Among his publications, Poor Richard's Almanac became the most famous. Alois Splendor invented lithography in 1796 and used it as a low-cost method for printing theoretical works. In a more refined form, lithography is still the dominant printing technique in this century. Another famous person from this era is Giambattista Bodoni, who created a series of typefaces that carried his name that are frequently used today. They are characterized by sharp contrast between the thick vertical stems and thin horizontal hairlines. Now, let us study about 19th century and history of printing in it. In 1800, Charles Stanhope built the first press, which was an iron frame instead of wooden one. The Stanhope's press was faster, more durable, and it can print large sheets. A few years later, another performance improvement was achieved by Frederick Gottlob Koenig and Andreas Frederick Bauer, who built their first cylinder press. Their company is still in existence today and is known as KBA. In the year 1837, Godfrey Englishman was awarded a patent on chromolithography, a method of printing in color using lithography in which chromolithographs or chromos are mainly used to reproduce paintings. The Illustrated London News became the world's first illustrated weekly newspaper, which costs 5 pence in the year 1842. A year later, Sir Henry Cole commissions the English painter pause. A year later, Sir Henry Cole commissions the English painter John Callcott Horsley to do artwork of the first commercial Christmas card. He printed around 1,000 cards and hand-colored it, among which 10 cards are still in existence. Around the same time, American inventor Richard Mars Hoe builds the first lithographic rotary printing press, a press in which type is placed on a revolving cylinder of flatbed. This speeds up the printing process considerably. In typesetting, Ottmar Mergenthal's invention of the year 1886, that is, linotype composing machine, was major step forward. With this typesetter, an operator can text using a 90 characters keyboard. This machine outputs the text as slugs, which are lines of metal type. In the year 1890, Baby Baron and Sons builds the first flexographic press. This type of press uses the relief on rubber plate to hold the image that needs to be printed because the ink that is used in first flexo press smears easily, and the device came to be known as Baby's Folly. Now, let us discuss about 20th century and history of printing in it. In the year 1903, American printer Ira Washington Rubel was an instrumental in producing the first lithographic offset press or paper. In the year 1907, the Englishman Samuel Simon was awarded with a patent for process of using silk fabric as a printing screen. After this, screen printing quickly became popular for producing expensive wallpaper and printing on fabrics such as linen and silk. A few of new press manufacturers that appears on market are Roland, nowadays known as Man Roland, in 1911 and Komori Machine Worked in 1923. It is during the same era that magazines such as National Geographic magazine, published in 1888, Life, published in 1883 but focusing on photojournalism from 1936, Time 1923, and The Reader's Digest 1920 started reaching millions of readers. Press manufacturer Koenig and Bauer launched the four-color iris printing in 1923. It can be used for printing banknotes. Over the security, printing became one of the most famous focus point of the company. In the year 1938, xerography, a dry photocopying technique, was invented by Chester Caslon. Japanese machine tool manufacturer Shinohara Machinery Company began manufacturing flatbread letterpress machines in the year 1948. Later in the year 1967, the ISBN or International Standard Book Number started, which is a unique numeric identifier for commercial books. The first laser printer, such as IBM 3800 and Xerox 9700, hit the market in the year 1975. They were prohibitively expensive but useful for applications such as check printing. Desktop publishing also takes off in the year 1985. Now, let us discuss about 21st century, which is currently going on, and history of printing in it. Two prime examples are the introduction of KBA Cortina, a waterless web press for newspaper and semi-commercials in the year 2000, and the giant Gauss Sunday 5000 became the world's first 96-page web press in the year 2009. In this century, inkjet technology also started making inroads in the packaging industry. So this is all for the history of printing. I hope this video will help you in understanding the key points of history of printing. Thank you so much. Have a great time ahead.